to another Britflicks.com podcast. And although this is an audio file, if you could see me now like Ben Parker can, writer-director of Burial, I look like the yellow man from Sin City. My settings are not telling me why this is happening, but luckily it is an audio recording and you won't see that. But anyway, without further ado, welcome, Ben Parker.
Hello. Hello, Stuart. Nick Stahl from Sin City.
We are 3 weeks on from your world premiere at Fright Fest, is that right? Of Burial.
Yeah, 3 weeks, yeah.
And we're fast approaching the release date. So do you want to give people a brief synopsis to what Burial is all about before we do 5 films that inspired Burial?
Sure. Burial is a thriller set in the last days of the Second World War, where a group of Soviet soldiers were given the task of covering up the death of Hitler and trafficking his remains out of Berlin to with the intention of taking it back to Russia and to Stalin. And they are set upon by all manner of nasty people trying to steal the body or defend the body or use the body for their own nefarious deeds. And it's out on the 26th with 101, yeah.
And how can people see that when it's out?
It's on demand and digital, so, iTunes, Sky Store, Amazon, missing some Google, all the places.
All the main HD player platforms where you can rent or buy it from. Is it going to be, can people buy it or will it just be to rent?
Yeah, buy as well. I think you can buy it now. Obviously, you might have to wait a week to watch it, but you can. Yeah, it's available to buy and to rent. Yeah,
cool. Now, your film stars Charlotte Vega, who people might recognise from the reboot of Wrong Turn.
Yeah, fantastic in that. Yeah.
And as I learned at Fright Fest TV Media Wall, the very recognisable Tom Felton from the Harry Potter world. The whole of Cineworld seemed to stop. As a group of people from the age of 25 to 30 were looking at an icon from their childhood.
Yeah, where horror fans and Harry Potter fans mix.
Yeah,
it was great. Yeah, it was a buzz, and I stood at the media wall with Charlotte and Tom and realised how tall I am.
Well, if you've not already seen it, I did tag you so you could get a look. The highlights reel of 2022 includes your mugging of my Tom Felton interview.
Yeah, I felt it looked like I was on like sort of high platform shoes or Tom was in a ditch. Yeah, I sometimes forget how tall I am. Yeah, but that was really fun. Yeah, it was a really good interview and good fun answering questions. Yeah, Tom was on good form as well.
He was. It was really interesting. We're going to do 5 films that inspired Burial. It's the normal format that people might be familiar with of the 5x5, except you've given me sort of prompts rather than titles. You'll give the title away in your description, but I'll be giving the headings, which are almost like, in a way, what you're giving me to say is like the ingredients of your film, which is kind of a nice way to unpack your movie. So the usual rules apply. Will be each one gets 5 minutes. There's 5 headings altogether, and I'm changing the alarm. So anyone that's very familiar with this and is used to the dog barking, they may have heard in a recent episode I moved to a different sound, so now we're going to get the alarm. Well, look, sir, without further ado, 5 films that inspired Burial. Let's start with war films.
Yeah, a good place to start, war films. From the outside, you sort of look at it and say it could be a war film. But it's a bit more than a war film. It's a mix of things. But yeah, essentially, if you're doing a film set at the end of Second World War, it is a war film. And so some of the inspirations that fed into that, there was a lot of books that I did in research. Great books by Anthony Beevor about the fall of Berlin. But in terms of film, the types of war film that I really love are the mission films with mostly like an ensemble cast. There's a thing that you have to do, and usually that a stellar ensemble cast usually gets picked off one by one rather unceremoniously, fall by the wayside. So things like Kelly's Heroes, Guns of the Navarone was a really favorite one of mine. Force 10 from Navarone, the sequel. Saving Private Ryan obviously was a massive influence as a war film. Das Boot, but I can't talk about Das Boot because that pretty much influenced my first film, The Chamber. So
yeah.
And there's a Polish film called Canal, which is, if anybody hasn't seen it, it's fantastic. You should check that out. But the big daddy of those mission films with ensemble casts is The Dirty Dozen. So my first pick would be The Dirty Dozen.
Well, in a way, when you say mission, it's like in traditional storytelling senses, it's the quest, isn't it? In a way,
yeah. It's the hero's journey, the quest, and in this sort of scenario, you go, well, we're going to need a team of people. You could say Mission Impossible is the same, and the TV series was like, we need a set of people with a certain set of skills to go do this thing, and then they usually get bumped off.
And Charlotte Vega she's leading this troop. She's the officer in charge, and it's kind of her story that we're looking back on, isn't it? From 1980s London. She'd be
Lee Marvin or Ernest Borgnine.
Not a thing that's ever been said about her in reviews, I don't think.
I'm sure it's not. No. What I was going to say about The Dirty Dozen was my grandfather was a technical advisor on it. So when I was exposed to the film at an early age, it came with a sort of bonus feature of the fact that my grandfather worked on that film. And the way that he talked about the actors, and the way my gran, who visited the set, actually talked about the different characters. She got to meet these actors. It was this sort of advert for this ensemble lineup of, there was this guy, and then this guy was an American football player, and then this guy, and I met him, and he's really nice.
Did they talk about Robert Aldrich at all to you?
My grandfather did, yeah, because obviously he was working directly with him.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest take home was that Aldrich liked the fact that they could blow stuff up in the UK. They filmed it over here, and so that you got the military expertise of all these ex-military guys. Yeah. And they were like, oh, can we blow up this tank, or can we blow up this 8-track? Yeah, just do that. You do that. And he'd get giddy about blowing stuff up and setting things on fire.
Because that would have been like the peak of him having been ostracized to Europe from America, wasn't it?
Yeah. Some great films in that oeuvre of him over here in Europe. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Killing of Sister George.
And what for you is the quintessential? If Dirty Dozen is the sort of pinnacle of the kind of war film influence for obvious reasons, but in terms of the film itself, what's a standout scene or sequence for you?
In the Dirty Dozen.
Yeah, in the Dirty Dozen. Yeah,
I think. I mean, there's so many great things that people have sort of nicked along the way. Like, it's sort of Inglourious Bastards. There's the training montage, and then obviously Kubrick did his own training sequences in Full Metal Jacket. So those are fun. They sort of feel like the Great Escape stuff. But really, you got to go for the ending. The whole film is leading up to this big ending and the suspense for this mission. So when you get to the end, and it gets really dark. It's like, if you see it again, like it's quite dark at the end. Everybody's like unceremoniously killed off, the quote unquote good guys, and then they drop a load of grenades into a shelter underneath this big mansion. I mean, that's going out with a big bang. That's the big huge finale. That's pretty cool.
I mean, it is. I mean, it's a fantastic concept, isn't it? The idea of people who are locked up, who
yeah.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
We'll never know what that was going to be about. Moving swiftly along, we have mixed genre. So what are you talking about there?
Mixed genre. I think, with my first film as well, it was sort of a mix of claustrophobic horror and thriller, sort of wrapped up with the sort of premise of military. This is the same. You could say it was a war film, but it's not an out-and-out war film. It's not hoorah sort of a war film. It has lots of horror elements. It has some really some mysterious drama in it. There's a mystery that the film sort of revolves around, and then there's some real like sort of gothic horror moments, not just in like the gore and the violence, but in the creepy guys coming out of the smoke and hallucinations in the forest. You touch on those things, and then it becomes a little bit mixed genre, and you have a harder time sort of defining it as this or that way. So one of the influences would be mixed genre films, and I think you get a lot of mixed genre in like things like westerns. So things like Bone Tomahawk would be a good comparison because it's essentially a western, but with some really horror overtones. Logan is a western sort of superhero film. Pan's Labyrinth, which is Guillermo del Toro was an amazing director. Some of the sort of war scenes of Pan's Labyrinth should not be overlooked for the sort of fantasy film that it is, because there's some great war stuff in that film, some great shootouts and attacks in the forest. But even things like Predator and Aliens, which are sort of action films, thriller films, but with real horror overtones. But the top pick for mixed genre is one of my favorite films, Ravenous by Antonia Bird. When I saw that film, I'm not sure. I haven't done enough digging on it, but I would imagine it might have been, a black point against it, because in the mixed genre, hard to sell it in America as a Western, which it looks from the outside, but it's really a horror about, cannibals and then it's this macho, very sort of weird two-hander with Guy Pearce and Robert Carlyle. And it becomes more than all the sum of its parts. It's a great film. And I think Antonia Bird she passed away, unfortunately, but she's a fantastic British director. I really sort of admire. She did a film called Face, which is great, and Priest. She's fantastic. Yeah, and Ravenous, definitely want to check out if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, no,
I think the people who've seen it are like hold it in cult status.
Well, I guess I'm just looking. I just checked what year it came out. So it came out the same year as sort of Fight Club, and in terms of where people's heads were at, then maybe a period mixed genre film wasn't going to get all the bums on seats, even though it's got a lot of star value in it. And I think but thankfully, because it is such a good film, it's one of those ones that sort of stood the test of time and regularly gets sort of lauded as a great sort of modern horror film.
And it's got some great elements. Like the soundtrack is amazing. It's sort of a mix up. Damon Albarn working with Philip Glass, I think it was, and
I didn't know
a strange mix. Yeah, it was a strange mix there. Piano with Damon Albarn sort of producing the soundtrack, and it's kind of quirky and weird. And I think that's another thing. You go, oh, it's a bit quirky. Do I like that? It forces you to sort of think, are you into this? Are you engaged in this? And it's above all engaging. You watch it and you listen to it, and it's really engaging. I think that's the thing. One of the unique selling points of Burial is that it is, an element of history that you might not have heard about, twisted with genre and with horror. And so hopefully it's at least engaging and something you haven't seen and keeps you interested. It zigs when it should zag. And I like those things. Unfortunately, you get the other side and you go, well, I wish it was this. I wish it was an out-and-out horror. Or I wish it was an out-and-out war film. Yeah. But, as long as you're engaged, as long as you're interested to the end.
Well, it didn't stop Overlord being a good film, did it?
Yeah. And that was that was heavy horror and really violent, wasn't it? Yeah. I wish I had the budget of Overlord.
No, of course. But still, that still starts out very much like a Dirty Dozen, doesn't it? A group of people lost in the war, trying to get from A to B, so they can save their.
It felt like a real nice pulpy comic book film. That did, yeah.
So
some great actors in.
So with yours, I mean, the things that, and this is something I learned from the one or two. Obviously, the idea of taking Hitler's body back to Russia, the idea that did or did not get attempted, is a lovely idea. As whether it's myth. I'm going to finish off saying there because I wanted to get to the point. I'm going to defy my own alarm. It's a lovely idea, and then it gets you thinking about it. But then you also introduced us to this notion of the Nazi werewolves, which sounds like a supernatural element, but actually it was a bunch of crazy guerrilla Nazis who hid out and used to pick you off. Like the idea that on top of the Nazi Third Reich thing, there was guerrilla offshoots doing sort of missions.
Yeah. I think and as soon as you say werewolf, some of the audience think, oh, is it going to be werewolf? But that was kind of the point as well, because some of the characters think the same thing, and it's playing with the idea of the sort of mythology that the Nazis wanted to use to make them seem scarier than what they were.
The occult was very much at the fore, wasn't it, for them? They wanted to seem more human they wanted to seem superhuman, didn't they? So they could frighten.
Yeah, and if the message is like, well, be careful of the myth and be careful of the lies. It's not always, true, and don't get caught up in the story too much. And it's dig beneath it. Then that's great, but on the surface, you hear werewolves and dead Hitler, and you think, "Wow, I'm getting an Overlord sort of comic book movie."
Well, thematically, those two that works thematically with the missions of the Russians and the Nazis in this.
Yeah,
one's trying to humiliate the memory of Hitler, and one's trying to preserve the idea that he was the super. Aryan,
and the Nazis are really like vampires in the film. There's a couple of lines about draining every drop of blood from the country. They really didn't care about the glory of their country. They wanted to like use every drop of blood in their horrible idealistic goal. And the werewolves, obviously, they came out at night, and you could draw comparisons to all these things, and then Absolutely. Hitler's like Frankenstein in this horrible box.
Indeed. Right, your third element you want to identify with your film is obsession. Do you want to talk us through how that relates to Burial?
A lot of the characters are obsessed about different things. The Nazi characters are obsessed with the idea of legacy, of this horrible ideology that they believe in. Charlotte's character is obsessed with the mission until she meets a wall that she can't break through. But I mean, I'm going to go back to my love of Westerns, the things that influenced me. And I loved films where characters became obsessed over buried treasure, and it was usually gold and things like the treasure of the Sierra Madre, or the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's usually like this treasure that makes people go crazy and do crazy things. And that's when I started writing the script. That's what I wanted to do, but with a really horrible treasure, with like evil gold. Gold corrupts anyway. And I would listen to the soundtrack for the good, the bad, and the ugly with the ecstasy of gold. But the fact that they're trucking this coffin or crate. I mean, it's very much like the Ark of the Covenant, thing that everybody's sort of looking over and revering. But
it's also interesting. It's interesting how, from Charlotte's character's point of view, she is the one obsessed with what they've been set out to do, whereas amongst her crew, it's different shades of how serious they're taking this mission, because the war's over, so what the fuck do we give a shit? Kind of. He's kind of. And every
there's definitely some character.
Tired of long waits and rushed care at the ER and urgent care clinic? Next time, stay home and let Dispatch Health bring the power of the hospital to you.
I call Dispatch Health. A care team of medical professionals actually come to your house.
They're the same caliber of people that you would see if you were at a hospital or an urgent care.
Dispatch Health can treat most non-life-threatening emergencies.
They can do the x-rays, they can do stitches,
urinary tract infections, blood test, urinalysis, ultrasound.
It's almost everything that they can do at the ER.
You never feel rushed. They're there for you and only you.
I felt like their only patient.
And it costs no more than a trip to urgent care, because Dispatch Health is covered by most insurance, including Medicare. See if we serve your home at dispatchhealth.com.
Dispatch Health really went above and beyond.
It's wonderful to have care come to your home.
House calls are back, and they're better than ever. Learn more at dispatchhealth.com.
Characters are like, I feel like the war is over, so why am I risking my life? And you can see the characters that really have an ideology, good or bad. Hers is that, this is going to lead to something very important, very good, until she realizes maybe if it falls into the wrong hands, it will be something very terrible. But the things that I was looking at were, also we were shooting in Estonia, in Tallinn, which is where they shot Stalker, which is one of my favorite films. And that journey into, the wilderness with this sort of, obsession with what's at the center of it, well, the thing that they're trying to find was sort of imbued into the script. But my top pick for that would be 3 Burials of Melchiatus Estrada, which is really essentially a revenge film. Tommy Lee Jones directed and starred it. But it's about this dead body that he digs up of his friend who's been killed, and they have to traffic the body back to this sort of spiritual site for the guy who died. And he drags along the guy who shot him. And it's this sort of obsession with teaching the guy that shot him the lesson of what this man's life was worth. And it's sublime. Like, Tommy Lee Jones' directing is amazing. He's a fantastic director, but his portrayal in the film, his performance in the film is sort of, he never really like slides over to revenge. He never comes across as like, I'm going to kill you. He's just like dark and brooding, doesn't talk most of the time, and this obsession to keep moving on and keep dragging this guy Barry Pepper along with it.
Yeah, it's a film I don't know. Really I'm glad to be introduced to it. It's not one I know, this one.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. You could call Burial the three burials of Adolf Hitler, really. I mean, that's what was in my head.
Really?
Yeah, the burying and burying of a body and then digging it back up as well is very visual on camera, and that lends itself. It's a neo-Western, so it's sort of present day Western.
Yeah.
Yeah, check it out if you haven't.
No, absolutely.
Really good.
So, did you retrace any steps of Stalker from where you shot in Estonia? Did you?
Yeah.
Did you do any kind of stalker sightseeing, for want of a better expression?
Yeah, we had weekends where we did like stalker tours. Yeah, there's because they shot a lot of it in the heart of Tallinn, and a lot of that stuff's not there anymore. But there's a street that they filmed on. There's a big cooling tower they filmed at. Yeah, it was great. It was actually surprising to me. I didn't know that it was shot in Tallinn. I assume, I guess, like lots of people, that it was filmed in Russia, but obviously it was filmed in Estonia in the USSR. Yeah.
And that was one of my catch-ups with something I meant to have watched during lockdown films was Stalker. I must have had it for about 7 years off a friend of mine and never got round to watching it. And then during lockdown,
someone pulled a shot from it as a homage in something that I saw recently that was amazing. And I thought, there is no other place that's from other than Stalker. Like, and they stole it. I can't remember what it was. I can't remember. It was a TV show or something. It was amazing. Yeah, it seeps into lots of things. Yeah, lots of inspiration there. And the vibe of it as well. The vibe is really like ominous.
Yeah, you kind of, the mission really isn't that clear, but they're on one. But it's about what are they going to find? Yeah,
and the music and the sort of eeriness of the landscape, and everything's dangerous.
And I guess the irony as well, like the production values of what the location is just to do with the slow collapse of the USR model. Yeah, it's like it's just legacy shit.
Yeah,
but it makes for a wonderful dystopia.
You see that at Stalker, and it's a long film, and you sort of just in it, and it's so hypnotic. But the landscapes and everything going on really gives you that ominous vibe. And then I read a book called Annihilation, which they turned into a film. Alex Garland directed.
Oh yeah.
And I remember reading the book, thinking, well, this is just like Stalker, this sort of phantom zone where everything's like creepy, and even the plants and the trees seem creepy, which you can't really get across on screen, and done in a certain sort of stylistic way with Alex Garland. But yeah.
Obviously I'd seen Annihilation before I saw Stalker, but now you say it, the similarities are too close, aren't they? Right then, moving swiftly ahead to your fourth element you want to discuss, which is you're calling Last Stand.
Last Stand films where, there's a group of people who, it all boils down to that last third act when there's usually a shootout or a last stand where you've got to protect something, or you've got to survive the last thing. And I mean, again, Saving Private Ryan does it really well, which they hark back to my favorite pick, which I'll say in a minute. But then I'll say it now. Rio Bravo is my favorite Last Stand movie, and that sort of goes into a lot of the inspiration of different scripts for me. It's such a great Western.
I mean, that's the big influence on Assault on Precinct 13, isn't it?
I was going to say, Precinct 13. So you can't talk about the other sort of Last Stand films without talking about Rio Bravo. So you have to do it that way around. Like, Precinct 13, Copland, which isn't really a last stand film, but it's imbued with this sort of Western sensibilities. And then there's a last stand at the end of the film.
Of course,
and
yeah.
I remember him saying something about like Rio Bravo. Yeah, it's got every, some great characters. Dean Martin's this sort of drunken cowboy, and so you think, oh god, he's not very good, and then he sort of sobers up and he's an amazing gun hand. Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite films.
Is that the way you get the introduction to his character? Is basically him taking the money out of the spittoon bottle? Like, is that down on his luck?
That is one of the greatest character introductions up there with like Paul Newman in The Verdict, where you can see 2 minutes of his introduction. You go, right, I know who this is, down to the bone. Yeah, absolutely amazing economical filmmaking.
And given how much you like it, then is there anything particular where you you're paying full homage to it in Burial?
Well, I'm pinching stuff.
Yeah, I mean, but using it to your own, using it to make it your own. Obviously, whenever you pinch, it always ends up becoming your own anyway.
Yeah. I don't know in script. In script is just the general last stand where the odds are stacked against you. This is bad. People want to sort of, people on your own side want to leave. It's a sort of spoiler, but there's a couple of characters who are like, well, this is not going to go well, so I think I'm going to check out. And you can just deal with it on your own. That was definitely sort of inspired from that. But most of it was, going on location scouts to Estonia and going around seeing some of the places that we wanted to shoot and thinking, oh man, that's the prison house and that's the jailhouse in Rio Bravo to a T, and that's great. Let's do it there. Everything looks like a Western, and I could, people shooting out of windows and stuff like that. And the musicality of the shootouts as well. There's a great sort of percussional musicality to the shootouts of Rio Bravo. Howard Hawks just sort of, I guess, sound in cinema was relatively new, and they were using every single element to the absolute sort of utmost, getting the audience to sort of feel those gunshots.
What did you do then with your sound and music in terms of that?
Just to make sure that we do that with our sound designer Martin Pavey and our recordist, making sure that we got real live, gun sounds that echoed in the proper way, that were like, just blasting and echoing in the right, audible way. So if you're in a small space, a gunshot's going to be even louder to make sure that it never sounded stock. And the musicality of smashing windows and then shooting and then footsteps and falling, and there's a sort of dance to it that you have to sort of make sure that, it's going to be there in the edit, but make sure that you get that on camera. And lots of
how detached is that, by the way? Because obviously we're seeing it all edited together, but I'm presuming when you shoot it, you're shooting the bit where the guy smashes a gun through the window and starts shooting. You're shooting the bit where someone's behind a bit of a bit of something to hide behind, and so you're getting those shots. But obviously, then you have to you're imagining this as a big action
hold it
sequence.
all in your head, which is just the sort of this thing that you have to do. You have to. When you see, in culture, you've seen films where, the director's standing behind the camera and going, I think we got it. How does he know that? How does he think he's got it? Did you get the lines on the script? Did you get the timing that you needed? There should be a picture in your head or a piece of music in your head that you hold on to. And when I say music, I mean like the music of the action. And if you have it, you think, I think those elements combined together in the edit will have that music, So that's sort of, and also to not forget the sort of punctuation of people as musical instruments. When you're firing a gun, it's rarely you fire a gun and go, oh, that was me firing a gun. It's usually kick back, oh geez, I just shot a gun and someone's shooting back at me, and oh god, to make sure that everybody remembers to do voice sounds when they're doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the time I would say imagine you're saying, fuck you as you're shooting the gun, but not actually say it, so you'd be like, fuck you.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Because, in those situations, you got to remember, when all the actors got the old replica guns in their hands, and some of them are actual real sort of World War II guns, and they jam up and they don't last very long with the ammo that they have. You suddenly realize, like, Jesus, how did anybody survive?
Yeah. Charlotte was saying just the sheer weight of them was something she had to get used to. And then, Tom was saying how he was wanting to work on the fact that he's got to look like he's done this 1,000 times before, as opposed to he's just been taught 2 hours ago by some armory fella.
That cocking of the rifle is like a fluid motion, and that's musical too. Like, and if you miss, it takes that time to reload. So if someone shoots at you, you're really shitting yourself if someone shoots at you. So that sort of audible sound of like, oh God.
Absolutely. Right then. Final choice of your 5. Your calling is What's in the Box. So what are you saying about the film here?
Well, yeah, there's a real mystery box in the film, and the themes of the film speak to. I mean, the opening bookends of the film is with Harriet Walter in 1991, and there's a sort of mystery box of, does she know this secret? Is she the person that this guy who's broken in thinks she is? And we, the audience, are thinking, oh, is this real? Is this a secret that's real? And she says in dialogue, as we're thinking that, be careful about wishing something's in the box. Be careful about this magical box that you're seeking, that you think is going to solve all your problems, because sometimes it's an empty box. And often people are pointing to an empty box and saying it's Pandora's box. It's everything that you've ever wanted. And then we get into 1945, and there is a box. There's an actual box with an actual dead body in it, and to have that dialogue set you up, because there's some of the characters think that the thing in the box is going to set them free, that it's going to let them go home to their families, or it's going to allow the legacy of their ideology to, or it's important that the truth of this thing inside the box comes out because it shows someone to be dead, and that ends a horrible chapter in history.
Yeah.
So everything's geared towards what's in the box. And then there's a moment in the film where you get to see in the box. And then there's another what's in the box moment at the end of the film when, Harriet has another box with a possible secret in, which I leave slightly open-ended. And I like the fact that people have their own theories about what it is. But that's inspired by films like, Seven, obviously, as a what's in the box, that you never see what's in the box.
Well, going back to our friend Robert Aldrich with Kiss Me Deadly.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's obviously deeply embedded in my brain, yeah. I think it's, there's directors like J.J. Abrams who like MacGuffins, like a mystery box, and it doesn't have to be as on the nose as that, but there is something amazing about like a mysterious thing, and Seven does that really well. Pulp Fiction with with whatever's in the briefcase. But my top pick is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay,
because that was a film that I watched when I was young, and that so many things about that film inspired the way that I try to make films, down to the action and the grittiness and the stunts and everything. But at the heart of it, there was this, Ark of the Covenant, this big thing that if you were paying attention, you got the history lesson of it, but you didn't really know what was in it. And you had to wait till the end of the film, and you go, oh my God, I bet it's something amazing. And it's something horrific.
Yeah.
It's something terrible.
It's the most horrifying PG movie you'll ever see in your life.
Yeah, exactly. And that, and I couldn't, I can't help but draw comparisons to this, to everybody's like trying to chase this box, like trying to get hold of this crate. We need, and I'm talking about Burial now, because you could be talking about the crate in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Everybody's trying to fight over this crate, and then the thing inside of it is just pure evil. And in the film, when you see what's inside of it, everybody's shocked by what they see. Everybody filming actually on set when we did those scenes, because it was so sort of horrifically lifelike and realistic. It was it was something horrible and evil. It was like taking the lid off the Ark of the Covenant, and your face melting.
Yeah, because you're right. Because it's most people in the war are not going to have come anywhere near to Hitler. So it's just the idea of Hitler that was either exciting and made you want to kill people, or frightened you and made you want to kill people. And so to have it there, still life, and it's not threatening anymore.
And I think that's what Charlotte's sort of goal becomes. That you think about these figures, good or bad, that you hold up with such reverence. The German people thinking, "Oh wow, he's godlike." To see an image of him dead after killing himself by his own hand would have been tearing down that demagogue sort of image, and it would have been really powerful. It would have been disgusting. It would have been something that's like filtering around on the internet, but it would have been a point where you said that
something filtering around on the internet, Ben.
Yeah, well, you should see my search history doing the research for this film. I'm on so many blacklists.
Well, look, let's remind people then, how can they get to see Burial?
You can see it, rent it on digital, on demand from iTunes, Sky Store, Amazon on September 26th.
Brilliant. Well, I'll put a link in the show notes so people can do that. And it just gives me to say thank you very much for joining us on the Britflicks Podcast.